It's probably the largest engineering project in the Arctic ever. When the United States sent lots of cargo and many thousand men to Thule to establish an airbase.
In the 1960s, the United States didn't just abandon a city beneath Greenland's ice, they entombed a secret, convinced the eternal glacier would serve as the ultimate vault. But as modern radar now peels back those frozen layers, it's revealing something far more disturbing than a simple engineering failure. It's exposing the signature of a hasty and calculated abandonment. What lies beneath is not just a toxic legacy, but a cold decision made in the heart of the Cold War. And as that icefall now melts and dissolves, it threatens to unearth a chilling answer to a haunting question. Was this environmental disaster not the accident itself, but the price they were willing to pay to bury a secret forever?
A message from deep beneath the ice. Far in the north, the country of Greenland is covered by a giant sheet of ice that is very thick and very old. Today, scientists from organizations like NASA are using a special technology called ice-penetrating radar to look deep down through all of that ice. This radar works by sending signals down into the ice, and those signals bounce back to create a picture of whatever is hidden below, letting us see things that have been buried for a very long time. One of the places they are studying is the location of an old American base named Camp Century, which was built many years ago in the 1950s. The story that was told to the world back then was that Camp Century was a peaceful place created only to study science and learn how to build things in the cold. But the pictures coming back from the new radar systems show something that does not fit that simple, peaceful story at all. The radar reveals not just a small camp, but a very large and complex city deep under the surface, with a whole network of long and wide tunnels that connect all of the buildings, like underground streets. Scientists immediately noticed that some of these main tunnels were much bigger than they needed to be for just moving supplies or small vehicles, raising serious questions about their real purpose. Even more confusing is how strong these tunnels were built. The radar shows that they were reinforced with huge steel arches, a design that is meant to handle enormous pressure and protect whatever is inside from extreme forces. A normal research station would never need this level of protection because it is too expensive and not necessary for science work. The whole structure looks less like a laboratory and more like a secret military fortress, built to survive something truly powerful and dangerous.
The perfect story for the world. To understand the real reason why the United States military built that huge, strong city under the ice, we must first look very closely at the official story they told to the public. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, the American government created many documentary films and news reports to show the world their amazing new project, Camp Century. These films were not meant to show a military base, but instead were designed to present a beautiful picture of scientific progress and human courage. The story they told was that Camp Century was a peaceful research station, a place where smart people could study the weather, the ice, and learn how to live and work in the most difficult and coldest environment on the planet. This was the story that was told to newspapers, to television stations, and even to the government of Denmark, the country that officially owns Greenland. According to these official films, life inside Camp Century was like living in a small, modern American town that was completely protected from the brutal Arctic storms outside. The film showed soldiers and scientists living in heated wooden buildings, all built inside the tunnels under the ice. These men had luxuries that were almost impossible to imagine in such a remote and frozen place. They had hot showers anytime they wanted, and they ate high-quality meals in a large dining hall with foods like steak and fresh vegetables that were flown in regularly. The city had its own library full of books, a movie theater to watch films for entertainment, a small hospital with a doctor, a church for religious services, and even a barber shop to get a haircut. This was all designed to show that American technology could create a comfortable and civilized society anywhere on Earth, no matter how hostile the natural world was. The heart of this amazing city was its source of power, a very special and advanced machine called the PM-2A nuclear reactor. A nuclear reactor is a machine that uses the power from atoms to create a huge amount of energy. The PM-2A was special because it was the first nuclear reactor in history that was portable, meaning it was built in sections that could be transported on a plane and put together in a very remote location. This small nuclear power plant provided all of the electricity for the city's lights and equipment. More importantly, it produced a huge amount of steam, and this hot steam was sent through pipes to heat all of the buildings, keeping everyone warm and safe from the freezing temperatures outside. The presence of nuclear power was a powerful symbol meant to show the world that the United States was a leader in peaceful new technologies. This entire picture, the comfortable town, the happy scientists, and the clean nuclear energy, was carefully put together to create a single powerful message. The message was that Camp Century was a project for all of humanity, a place of pure science and peaceful exploration. The United States military presented this story so well and with so much detail that the whole world believed it. It was a story that was exciting, inspiring, and completely convincing. And because this story was so perfect, it became the perfect alibi, a public explanation so strong and believable that it successfully hid a much larger and much more secret military plan for many years.
The real reason for the city, the beautiful story of Camp Century as a peaceful science base, was not true, and it was created to hide a much bigger and more secret plan from the rest of the world. After many years, the United States government released secret military documents that finally told the real story. These documents revealed that Camp Century was only a small part, a test piece for a massive military project with a secret code name, Project Iceworm. The final goal of Project Iceworm was not to study the weather or learn about the Arctic. Its real purpose was to turn the huge Greenland ice sheet into a hidden and indestructible launch site for hundreds of nuclear missiles, creating a secret weapon that would give the United States a huge advantage in the Cold War. The Cold War was a long period of great tension and conflict between the United States and another powerful country called the Soviet Union. Both countries had thousands of nuclear missiles, and they both lived in constant fear that the other side would launch a surprise attack. At that time, most of America's nuclear missiles were kept in underground concrete structures called silos. The big problem with these silos was that they were in fixed locations, so the Soviet Union knew exactly where they were. In a war, the Soviet Union could destroy all of these missiles in the first few minutes of a surprise attack, leaving the United States with no way to fight back. Project Iceworm was created to solve this very serious problem by creating a missile base that was completely invisible and always moving. The secret plan for Project Iceworm was enormous in scale. The military wanted to use giant machines to dig a massive network of tunnels under the ice, stretching for about 4,000 kilometers, which is a distance longer than the entire width of the United States. Inside this hidden underground world, they planned to place 600 nuclear missiles. These missiles would not stay in one place. They would be mounted on special trains that would constantly move through the thousands of kilometers of tunnels 24 hours a day. The key to this plan was complete secrecy and surprise. Because the missile trains were always moving, the Soviet Union would never know the exact location of the missiles at any given moment. The thick ice sheet above would act as a powerful shield, protecting the tunnels from a nuclear bomb attack on the surface, and more importantly, blocking any spy satellites or radar from seeing what was hidden deep below. Now, the true purpose of Camp Century becomes very clear. The large, oversized tunnels that scientists saw on the radar were not for normal trucks. They were practice tunnels built to test if the ice could support heavy trains carrying nuclear missiles. All of the scientific research that was shown to the public was just a cover story, a clever distraction to allow the military engineers to do their secret work without anyone asking difficult questions. The entire city, with its nuclear reactor and comfortable living spaces, was built to prove that a large number of soldiers could live and work under the ice for a very long time, which was necessary for the full Project Iceworm plan to succeed. The United States was willing to spend a huge amount of money and take enormous risks because they believed this secret missile base was the ultimate weapon, the one thing that could guarantee they would win the Cold War.
They could not win. The American military engineers who designed Project Iceworm were some of the smartest in the world, and they were extremely confident in their plan. They believed that they had finally found a way to conquer the brutal Arctic environment and build a permanent, hidden fortress for their missiles. Their entire plan, however, was built on top of one single, very important belief. They believed that the Greenland ice sheet was a solid, static, and unchanging mass of frozen water. In their calculations, the ice was like a type of rock or concrete, a permanent building material that once a tunnel was dug out of it would stay in that shape forever with very little effort. This fundamental belief was the foundation for the entire project, but it was completely and catastrophically wrong. What the engineers did not fully understand at the time was the true nature of a glacier. A glacier is not a static block of ice. It is, in reality, a very, very slow-moving river of solid ice. Over thousands of years, snow falls on top of the ice sheet, and the weight of all this new snow becomes incredibly heavy. This immense weight creates enormous pressure on the ice deep below. Under this constant pressure, the ice stops behaving like a solid and starts to act like an extremely thick and slow-moving liquid, a process that scientists call glacial deformation. This means that the entire Greenland ice sheet is always moving, flowing slowly from the center of the island outward toward the ocean. The engineers had built their city inside a force of nature that never ever stood still. The consequences of this mistake for the people living in Camp Century were slow but relentless. The walls of the tunnels, which were supposed to be permanent, immediately began to move. Day by day, they bulged inward, slowly shrinking the living and working spaces. The strong steel arches that were supposed to hold the tunnels open were put under immense stress, bending and groaning under the weight of an entire continent of ice pushing down on them. The ice floor beneath the buildings was also unstable, twisting and warping in unpredictable ways. This constant movement made it a nightmare to maintain the base. Maintenance crews had to work around the clock, using giant saws to shave away the encroaching ice from the walls. But it was a battle they could never win. They were trying to fight against the movement of the entire glacier. Even more serious than the shrinking tunnels was the danger this movement posed to the nuclear reactor. A nuclear power plant is a very sensitive machine that requires absolute stability to operate safely. Its many pipes for steam and cooling water must be perfectly aligned to prevent any leaks of dangerous radioactive material. As the ice floor twisted and warped, it put extreme stress on the metal joints and pipes of the reactor system. The engineers realized they were facing a growing risk of a catastrophic failure, a crack or a break in the system that could cause a radioactive disaster. By 1966, the United States military was forced to accept a difficult truth. Nature was winning the war. The speed of the glacial movement was much faster than anyone had predicted, making Project Iceworm impossible and making Camp Century too dangerous for anyone to live in. They had to evacuate and abandon the base forever. Now they faced a new and very difficult problem: how to leave their secret base without letting the world discover the real military reason it was built in the first place.
The crime scene left behind when the United States military made the final decision to evacuate Camp Century. They were faced with a very serious choice. The normal and correct way to close a military base, especially one with a nuclear reactor, is to do a full cleanup. This means taking away all of the buildings, all of the equipment, and all of the waste materials to make the area safe again. But a full and proper cleanup would have been a very slow and very expensive process. It would have required thousands of workers and hundreds of supply planes. And this huge amount of activity would have attracted a lot of attention from the world and from the government of Denmark. If people started asking questions about why they were removing so much evidence of a simple science station, the secret of Project Iceworm might be discovered. The military leaders decided that protecting their secret was more important than protecting the environment. They chose to abandon the city and everything in it, creating a huge and toxic crime scene that they would leave buried under the ice. The scale of what they left behind is truly shocking when we look at the official records.
First, they left the entire physical city. This includes all the prefabricated wooden buildings, the steel arches that supported the tunnels, miles of pipes and electrical wires, and all the heavy equipment they used for construction. But the buried buildings were not the most dangerous part. They also left behind an enormous amount of chemical and radioactive waste. The records show that there are approximately 200,000 liters of diesel fuel still buried there. Diesel fuel is a toxic liquid that was used to power the vehicles and the backup generators for the city. They also left behind large quantities of a very dangerous group of chemicals called PCBs, or polychlorinated biphenyls. These chemicals were used in paints, plastics, and electrical equipment to prevent them from breaking down. We know today that PCBs are extremely harmful to living things. They do not break down in nature and can cause cancer and other serious diseases. The most dangerous thing they left behind, however, was radioactive waste from the nuclear reactor. While the main solid fuel core of the reactor was removed and taken back to the United States, the reactor produced a very large amount of radioactive cooling water during its years of operation. This water contained low levels of radioactive particles that are harmful to life. Instead of collecting this dangerous water, packaging it safely, and removing it from Greenland, the military used a much simpler and more dangerous method of disposal. They drilled a deep hole or a well into the bottom of the ice sheet and simply pumped all of the radioactive liquid waste directly down into the glacier itself. This decision effectively mixed the radioactive poison with the ancient ice of Greenland. The military was able to walk away from this environmental disaster because they had a single, powerful belief. They believed that the Greenland ice sheet was the world's most perfect and permanent freezer. They calculated that the constant snowfall year after year would continue to bury the base deeper and deeper under the ice. They also believed that the extreme cold would keep everything frozen solid forever, locking the diesel fuel, the PCBs, and the radioactive ice in place so they could never move or cause any harm. They thought they had found the perfect way to make a problem disappear. They were treating the glacier not just as a hiding place, but as a permanent tomb for their secrets and their poison. The perfect tomb begins to melt. The military's entire plan to hide their secret city and its dangerous waste depended on one single, unchangeable idea: that the Greenland ice sheet would stay frozen solid forever. For a long time, this idea seemed to be correct. For many decades after Camp Century was abandoned, the heavy winter snows continued to fall, burying the base deeper and deeper, and the extreme cold kept all the toxic materials locked safely inside the hard, solid ice. The military leaders who made the decision to leave everything behind were confident that their problem had been permanently solved, buried so deep that no one would ever find it, and frozen so completely that it could never cause any harm. They believed their perfect tomb would last for thousands of years, but they did not and could not predict the enormous changes that would begin to happen to the entire planet in the future. In recent decades, scientists have proven that the Earth's climate is getting warmer. This global warming is having a very powerful effect on the coldest places on our planet, especially on the massive ice sheet covering Greenland. The warmer air temperatures during the summer are now causing much more snow and ice on the surface of the glacier to melt than ever before. This creates huge amounts of liquid water, which is often called meltwater. In the past, this meltwater would mostly flow across the surface of the ice and into the ocean. But something new and dangerous is happening now. The water is not just staying on the surface. Instead, it is finding its way down into the glacier itself. It flows into deep cracks and tunnels that go hundreds of feet down, carrying the heat from the surface deep into the heart of the ancient ice. This process is a complete disaster for the buried city of Camp Century. Remember that the base is buried about 30 to 60 meters below the surface. The liquid meltwater, full of warmth from the sun, is now reaching these depths for the first time in history. When this liquid water reaches the buried waste, it becomes an active and destructive force. It is no longer a perfect solid freezer. It is now a wet, dissolving environment. The water seeps into the old rusted metal containers holding the diesel fuel, mixing with the fuel and helping it to spread. The water acts as a solvent, which means it can dissolve chemicals, so it starts to pull the dangerous PCBs out of the old paints and plastics, mixing them into the flow. Most importantly, this warm water melts the old ice that contains the radioactive waste, releasing those harmful radioactive particles from their frozen prison and allowing them to float freely in the liquid water.
Before, all of these poisons were trapped, locked in place inside the crystal structure of solid ice. Now, because of the melting, they are all mixed together into a moving, underground toxic river. This poisoned water does not stay in one place. It follows the natural channels and cracks inside the glacier, slowly but surely flowing under the force of gravity toward the edge of the ice sheet. The perfect tomb that the military created has failed. The very ice that was supposed to hide their secret forever is now becoming the vehicle that will carry their toxic legacy out of the darkness and into the living world, with the final destination for this poison being the clean, cold waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. A wall of official silence. As the toxic river under the ice slowly flows toward the ocean, the problem of Camp Century is no longer just a scientific one. It has now become a very serious political and legal problem. The big question that must be answered now is who is responsible for cleaning up this dangerous mess. 3 different governments are now involved in this dangerous situation, and each one has a very different point of view. The first is the United States, the country that built the base and left all the waste behind. The second is Denmark, the country that had legal control over Greenland when the base was built. And the third is Greenland, which is now a self-governing territory, and its people are the ones who will be most directly harmed by the pollution. The government of the United States says that it is not responsible for the cleanup because of a very old agreement that was signed with Denmark in the year 1951. This agreement was a defense treaty that allowed the U.S. to build military bases in Greenland. At that time, more than 70 years ago, there were no strong international laws about protecting the environment. The agreement had rules about building the base, but it did not have any clear rules about who had to clean up the base after the military left. Because of this, the United States argues that when they closed Camp Century, they legally returned the land to Denmark, and so the responsibility for whatever is there now belongs to Denmark. Their argument is based on the old laws and rules from the past. The government of Denmark completely disagrees with this argument. Danish officials say that their government gave permission for a small, peaceful science station because that is what the United States told them they were building. They never gave permission for a secret military project
to test a nuclear missile launch system. And they certainly never agreed to allow the United States to leave a giant chemical and radioactive waste dump behind. Their position is that since their agreement was based on false information, they cannot be held responsible for the consequences of a secret project they knew nothing about. They believe the moral and financial responsibility belongs to the country that created the danger in secret. And caught in the middle of this argument is Greenland, the territory and the people who are in the most direct danger. Greenland is a self-governing territory, but it does not have the billions of dollars or the special technology that would be needed to clean up a huge, buried toxic waste site. Their leaders have said publicly that this is a violation of their rights and a great danger to their people who depend on hunting and fishing in the ocean that is now threatened by the pollution. The result of this disagreement is a complete deadlock, a situation where no one will take action. The United States does not want to pay the enormous cost of a cleanup, and it also does not want to officially admit the full secret of Project Iceworm. Denmark refuses to take responsibility for a problem it says was created by American military secrecy, and Greenland is unable to solve the problem alone. This has created a wall of official silence while the danger quietly grows. So while the politicians and lawyers in comfortable offices argue about the words written in old documents, the ice in Greenland continues to melt every single day. Nature does not care about human politics or old treaties, and it is moving forward with its own final solution to the problem, a solution that will affect everyone, the final verdict of the planet. After looking at all the evidence, from the secret military documents to the science of the melting ice, the answer to our big question becomes very clear. The United States military accepted the huge risks and abandoned Camp Century in such a careless and dangerous way for one primary reason: to protect the absolute secrecy of Project Iceworm. A proper and safe cleanup of the base was never a real option for them, because it would have exposed the truth to the world. A full cleanup would have required them to explain the oversized tunnels, the secret railroad tracks, and the true military purpose of the city.
revealing a strategic secret they valued more than the safety of the Arctic environment. The toxic legacy left behind in Greenland was not an unfortunate accident. It was the direct result of a calculated decision. The military leaders of the time weighed their options, and they decided that the long-term risk of environmental pollution was a price worth paying to keep their secret missile project hidden from their enemies and from their allies. They made a bet that the ice would stay frozen forever, and that their secret would be safe for all time. The true and final legacy of Camp Century, therefore, is not a story about a failed city. It is a powerful and sober warning about the limits of human power. It shows that military decisions made with a short-term goal can create environmental problems that last for centuries. It teaches us that you cannot use nature as a permanent hiding place, because nature is always changing. The perfect crime of hiding a toxic secret under the ice is now slowly and surely exposed by the one witness they could not control: the planet itself. The melting ice is the final verdict, delivering a clear message that what is buried in the earth will eventually be returned by the earth, and that no secret can truly be kept forever.
Amazing discoveries! Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Share this video with friends and join the discussion on what these findings could mean. Your thoughts and questions are important, so let's explore incredible mysteries together.